I'm here with a writer of a parenting book. If you're a parent and you kind of don't know what to do with your kids, they push your buttons, you feel like you're just not doing things right, you're doing something wrong, and you don't know what to do. You're losing touch with your kids, and they act out, they throw tantrums, and they behave in ways that really seem to make your life difficult. This is a conversation you're going to want to listen to, because I'm here with Ava Brooke. She is a writer, she's a coach, and she is a parent also. But she's written a book called Behavior is Communication. That is super exciting. I love that, because behavior is communication, and we are to seek the thing under the thing that our children are saying with their behavior. But Ava, welcome. Thank you for having this conversation.
Thank you, Jesse. It's lovely to be on your show, and I really am honored that you've invited me along.
I'm so happy that you're here. And just tell our audience, where are you from?
Well, I'm actually originally from New Zealand, so I'm a Kiwi, and I've been born and bred in New Zealand, and did all my education here. If none of you know where New Zealand is, we're pretty much right down the bottom of this tiny little island next to Australia. So, and a very beautiful country it is. So what can I say about New Zealand? I hope one day that people will come and visit us. And we have an amazing education system here. We have a system that really works on strength-based teaching. It's very clear that our families and our children must be listened to. It's very equitable. It's very accountable. And I've been in the education field for over 30 years. And first and foremost is our children and our families.
That's so true. And I was in education for 17 years. And that's kind of why I moved into helping parents as well, because I think that is such a foundation. You can have, kids in a classroom, whether they come and see you twice a week, 3 times a week, every day. But when they go home, that's where the real kind of education happens, especially at the impressionable ages, and helping parents to make that journey a lot easier and fun. That's what we're all about, right? You did say something. You said you are all about strength-based education in New Zealand. By the way, I doubt that anyone doesn't know where New Zealand is. And if you don't, and something we talked about in our first conversation, it is on my bucket list to live there one day. So,
Wonderful.
But strength-based education, what does that mean?
When we're looking at strength-based education, we're looking at the child. We're looking at the holistic child, not just the academic. We're looking at what their passions are, and developing a curriculum around and learning around their passions, around their strengths. So when they're younger, it could be play-based. Play-based learning means that we're really looking at how can play develop a child's skills, their gross and motor skills. How can they develop their emotional skills? How can we develop their self-regulation skills through play? And as they move through the curriculum, we look at the strengths around the child and how we can develop them. So a lot of our children have individualized curriculums and learning programs around them.
How does that work in a school? I mean, I know you were in education for 30 years. How does each child get personalized education if you have a classroom of like 25 kids and a school of maybe like 400?
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge in which you can have 25 different personalities, and you have to get to know your children, build relationships. If a teacher hasn't built that relationship with a child, then where are they going to go with it? The child's relationship and your relationship with the family as a teacher is first and foremost. And then from that, you learn what their strengths are. So for some children, you can group them together because they're very similar. But for those who are either neurodiverse or are struggling with specific areas, or maybe even gifted and talented, you do an individual plan with the teacher and the parent and maybe the specialist teacher in the school, and you develop a plan that could be integrated into the bigger classroom. So majority might be taught the same or in similar program, and these other children will have those extra supports around them. They might even go to another classroom if they're gifted in art. They might have extra art programs. They're gifted in music. They might have extra music programs. So it's developed around them.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful, and I hope other countries kind of follow suit. I know there are probably a lot of countries that do great things in education, but including the family into the dynamic, it should be first and foremost.
Yeah.
But let's talk about behavior as communication, right? Because a lot of the people who follow me are parents. And what a great title for the book, because it is so true. Behavior is communication. I teach this thing that I learned from a storytelling perspective. A Hollywood editor, Jeff Bartsch, he calls it in editing to find the thing under the thing, the emotional story behind like the regular plot structure. And I've applied that to parenting, right? Behavior is communication. So what was the impetus for writing this book? Where did the idea come from? And then the motivation to actually do it?
Okay, well, let me tell you a story.
Awesome.
When I was a house school teacher, and a house school teacher is when you are working with students. We have what we call a house school throughout New Zealand, and you work with students who are too unwell to go into school to learn, have the capabilities of learning, but just are too unwell for whatever reason, whether it be anxiety or a neurodiverse condition, a terminally ill. It's not a full-time school, it's a transitional one until they're well enough to be transitioned back into school. So I had this child that I was asked to go and visit at a high school. She was 14 and she was very, very challenging and had been in a very difficult situation since the age of 3. Now she's 14 now, and 3 years from the age of 3, she had a trauma life, absolutely traumatic, and didn't want to live. She was a cutter. She had huge cuts on her arms. She was in intensive care several times because she just didn't want to live. And her life was just really, really hard for her, but also very aggressive and very angry. But school was one place that she did turn up every day and challenged just about anybody and everybody that she met. Because school is a safe environment for a lot of them, for a lot of these
That's a
challenging
great
kids.
that's
Yeah.
Let's pause there, because that might not be, that's something I never really considered, but it makes total sense to me that school is a safe place for people that, quite frankly, probably many teachers are like, they see them walk in the door and they're like, "Why couldn't you stay home today?" You know what I mean? But that's such a great, because I have teachers who follow me too. That's such a great perspective shift, that this is a safe place sometimes for kids like that. Because I'm guessing her home life was where a lot of the trauma came from, right?
Yes, absolutely. And Jesse, this is why teachers need, and adults, whatever adults are around a child, need to have good relationships. They need to build that first before they do anything else. Build that relationship. So what happens when I went to visit this child at school, she was really angry. And the first thing she did was pick up a guitar that was in the corner and start strumming it. And I love music, and my sons play music. So I allowed her to continue strumming, and I sat on the chair just watching her. And then I didn't stare at her or anything, because that would have just caused conflict. What I did do was say to her, I'm just going to read this science paper to you, and you don't have to say anything. But I says, if you do want to, when it comes to question time, you can either nod, or you could just shake your head, or you could come up next to me and just point if you want to the answer. So I started reading, and then I noticed the strumming got a bit quieter and a bit quieter, and I knew she was taking it all in. So she played the guitar like a professional. So I knew she wasn't as, she had intelligence. And she was taking an interest, even though she wasn't sitting right next to me. The strumming got quieter and quieter. And then eventually, when it came to the questions, I said to her, would you like to come up or do you just want to stay there and nod and shake your head? And she goes, oh, I'll come up. So she came up, and she didn't say anything, but she pointed to the answers. She got them all correct, which meant a lot of learning was going on, even though you as a teacher would think, oh, they're not listening. And that's something else we have to remember. Children are listening. Whether they be neurodiverse or not, children can hear us. So be very aware, adults, when you are standing next to a child, that you're not having this wonderful conversation with a teacher or a negative conversation with a teacher and that child standing there or listening. So this young girl decided she wasn't going to be at school anymore. She wanted to be taught from home, and at the house school we could do that. We could go to their home. But when I visited her home, I realized straight away that this was not a place to teach her. So I went down to the community center and I asked if I could have a room free of charge, and I told them why, and they gave me a room that I could use twice a week to bring her to teach her.
For one-on-one
So I
tutoring.
used to drive, so I used to
Awesome.
drive 45 minutes twice a week, and I would make sure that I got there right on time. I would sit on the porch and wait for her. Sometimes she would deliberately make me wait, and that was fine. This was all about her timing. It wasn't about my timing. This was about me being there for her. And that's the big thing about behavior. It's not about what we want. It's about how do we wait until this child is ready to change their behavior. So eventually she started turning up right on time. She was ready. She was showered. She looked lovely. And she'd try things like smoking in front of me, and I just sit there and I go, hey, do you know what color your lungs were when you were 5? And she goes, no. And I go, they were pink. And I just left it. I knew she was intelligent enough to go and find out what happens when you smoke and what color your lungs are, because 3 weeks later she stopped smoking. That's all you had to say. It was
you didn't even connect the dots for her. You just threw it out. That's awesome.
And throwing things out like that, children are inquisitive. They want to know. They'll go and find out. You lecture them, they'll turn off. Not all of them, but most of them. And anyway, we got in the car and I'd drive her and I would chat away to her, and I'd always be smiling and saying, it's lovely to see you, and gosh, you look lovely today, and isn't it neat, we've got great weather today. So it's very, very general conversation, but I always told her how lovely she looked and that it was so lovely to be here with her, and that. Anyway, I'm not kidding. 3 months went by and she turned around and looked at me, because she never spoke. She'd do her work, but she would very rarely say any words. She says to me, don't you ever shut up? And I laughed. I laughed. And I says, not until you talk to me. And the walls just dropped. It took 3 months to build that connection of laughter. And from then on, she did her work. She loved her homework. She loved knowing that she had stuff to do when she got home. And she passed her exams, what we call NCEA, or it would be your exams to pass sort of the first level of college, to get into college, sort of thing.
Or the American SAT kind of.
Yeah. She passed them, and she was just over the moon. And I was so proud of her.
That's so cool.
So the following year, she managed to come into the into the house school classrooms. And then after that, Jessie, that young girl went out to work for 3 years at the meat works, because that was where her stepfather and her mother worked. And she did amazing. She got to manage a position, and she now is in her 3rd year of engineering. She's now an engineer nearly finished, and she invited me to her wedding, and this is a young person who was honestly, if we hadn't connected, probably would have ended up in the gangs or on the streets.
Yeah.
And I
I
just
mean,
say that it's very powerful what adults, when you build that connection with a child, and yes, there were expectations from me, there was boundaries, but they were achievable ones. So Jesse, I look at this, you see an iceberg and you see the level of the sea. On the top of that iceberg is all the behaviors that people see, the anger, the swearing, the kicking out, and even as a teenager, but maybe as a child, the tantrums, the unhappiness, the moodiness, the depression, the anxiety. But go below the sea, the rest of the iceberg is like this. It's massive. And under the sea is all the emotions that child is feeling: fear, hunger, trauma, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-esteem,
self-hate.
failure, self-hate, don't want to live. All these massive, huge emotions are under the iceberg, and the tip, we only see the tip. And that's why we need to be really, really aware that behavior, when a child misbehaves, is it just a meltdown, or is it just a tantrum, or is it a meltdown? If it's a meltdown, as you know, a tantrum, they'll probably open one eye and say, is dad or mum watching me? If I, can I get that toy now? Or if it's a meltdown, it's all those emotions under that iceberg, under that water that we don't see, that child cannot deal with. And we as adults need to learn what are those emotions and how can we help that child. So there's a very big difference between someone who's just being spoiled and having a tantrum and someone who's actually having a meltdown and does not have control. And we need to support them. Yeah.
That's so fantastic. I love that story so much. I mean, I know you're not one to probably, take credit or take praise or whatever, but you should, because you saved her life, and because of your meetings together, she's an engineer, and because you know what, people who come from that background, she's a fighter. She has to be a fighter. So she's with some guidance and direction, she's going to be successful, at whatever it is, at either being a disaster or successful at being what we would call success. And that's just beautiful. One of my favorite movies is Good Will Hunting. And that's all I thought about. Like, you're the doctor in Good Will Hunting, and then she's Matt Damon.
Oh, Jesse, there are so many beautiful stories out there. And there are, it's really important for us, especially now, and I say this sincerely, is I guess, with me, my children are in their 30s now, and they're both very successful and very, very caring, kind, and considerate young males, well-rounded. And I don't say that because I'm their mum. I say that because that's the path they chose to move on. And we've had our challenges because I've brought my children up on my own for nearly 22 years. But I look at them and I go, wow, you have chosen to be good young men in this world. So you're going to be great role models. And this is what's lacking in this world, is role models. Because years ago, there were two-parent families, but now there's a lot of single-parent families. And if you have sons, and I'm saying this honestly and out of experience, once your children turn 12, helicopter mothers, please stop being helicopter mothers. Your child needs good male role models. And it doesn't mean mates of yours. It means go out there and find a good sports role model. It could be music. It could be art. It could be just somebody who likes the same sports as your child, get good role models around them, and allow those role models to share and take them out on journeys and enjoy life, and teach them how to be males.
Take them
Let
out
them
on what?
enjoy on journeys
Oh,
around,
journeys.
like, yeah,
Yeah, I thought you
like,
said journeys. So, like, let's get practical here. Like, let's imagine, because I'm in single parenting group too, because I'm a single parent, I'm divorced. So I see a lot of this. So what do you say to, if I'm a mother, I'm a single mother, it's hard to have a social life and be a single parent too, right? And let's imagine that I have a lot of bad bad decisions. I make bad decisions with choosing men. I don't have many positive males in my life. How can I be a mother and direct my male children toward a positive male role model without, keeping in mind that once they reach 10, 11, 12, they're going to do the opposite that I say, you know? So like,
well,
how,
the old
like,
saying.
how does that look like? How did you do that? For one, oh, well, are you separated or divorced, or were you single?
No, I took my children away from a situation that wasn't healthy for them, which was violence. And so for me, it was really important um, to ensure that I broke the cycle.
Hmm.
So first and foremost, the parent needs to want to change.
Yeah.
Okay, they need to put their children first, and a lot of them don't. I'm sorry, a lot of them put their own needs first, and they're not putting their children's needs first and foremost.
Do you
But if you
think,
do put,
sorry,
sorry,
do you think that it's because I kind of, and I want you to finish that thought, but like, I kind of see it as being the opposite. I think they don't put themselves first, but they don't put their children first either, but they claim they do. So, but since they don't put themselves first, they don't have the love to share to their children,
yeah, good
you know?
point, Jesse. Absolutely. Self-care. If your tank is empty, how can
Hmm.
you how can you help and support your children? So self-care is very important. I think why does people complicate things? Let's keep it simple. Let's look at a simple routine when you wake up in the morning. A lot of these parents are waking up when their child wakes up.
Hmm.
Try and wake up an hour before your child. Try and have a shower and your breakfast before your child wakes up, so that you're ready. Your tank is filled. You've had your cup of tea. You've had your time out. So that's filling your tank. That's giving
Yeah.
you that
Yeah.
energy, right? And you feel good because you've had a shower and you've had time to put your makeup on and brush your hair and dress nice. So by the time your child is getting up, you've got time to get there, to maybe say, hey, look, I'll go and make us a nice breakfast. Or you could have got all those things like lunch and that prepared the night before, so that you're not rushing around in the morning, especially if you're working, that
Yeah.
you've got lunches that made the night before. Your child's had a chance to help you make those lunches. They might, even if they're little, they might just get their lunchbox onto the table. My kids, when he was 3, used to set the table. Sure, it was all crooked and placemats were all over the place, but it doesn't matter. But they
Yeah.
got the understanding they were part of a family, and we ate at the table. There was none of
Yeah.
this eating in front of TV or anything. It was a family time. Dishes, the little one might be able to put the dishes away, might not reach the cupboard or the bench, but they can still participate.
Yeah.
So you get yourself ready before your children, and then do these little tasks the night before to make the morning easier for you. And then when it comes to dropping off, make sure that you drop off with a smile and a hug, not a hurry up, get out of the car, I've got to get going. It's a real important time that you send your child off with at least a hug and have a great day. And I remember well, how old was he? He would have been about 14. Always hugged him. Then one day I went to hug him and he goes, Mum, don't hug me. And he stood back and I went, whoa. And he goes, they're looking. Everyone might look. All of a sudden, just overnight. And it wasn't until he was 18, that's 4 years later, he says to me, aren't you going to hug me? And I went, what? You know what I mean? Like, where did the 4 years go that I wasn't allowed to hug? And then all of a sudden, it's like, aren't you going to hug me? So your child will tell you when it's right and when it's not right, but you've got to respect that. You've got to respect it and go, yeah, okay. And when you come home, have a routine. Give your child something to eat. You go and have a cup of tea. Make sure that you have some time, a bit of downtime. That's filling your tank, giving yourself while your child's watching a bit of TV or something. That's not going to hurt them, provided you've got a very set time of, okay, devices off or TV off. This is homework time. Then it's bath. Then it's dinner. Then it's bed. So you've got very good routines in place that your child feels secure. They know what's coming next. They feel safe. They are really thriving because they know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. You feel in control, but not being in control, but you feel that there's some control over your life and your day. So routines are gold. Routines are so important. And if your child is neurodiverse, use your visuals. Get pictures up and say, right, when you do this, it could be when you brush your teeth, then you can be on your device. Or when you put your bag away, then you can go and play on your bicycle. So you've got pictures showing when and when.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Yeah. And that way they are processing it and going, okay, so when I do this, then I can do this. They know what's coming next. Children like to know what's coming. We like to know what's coming next as adults. They do too.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So keep it simple.
Important. That's something very important. Like, we like to know what's happening next. Like, I mean, what if you're going to work? Do you like showing up and not having any idea what like a manager's gonna say or tell you what to do every day? No, you like knowing what you're gonna do the day before.
Yeah.
You like having a project that takes some time, that you know which direction you're going. We are that way. So imagine how much more our kids are that way as well.
100%. So keep coming back to what would I want? Remember, the children are modeling your behavior. They're modeling your behavior. I loved your story about you doing exercise at your child's game and your daughter saying to you, some things are done at home, Dad. I loved that because that is true. She modeled your behavior. She's modeling. Your children model everything from what you buy at the supermarket to the size of your meals to what you even order when you go out. Your children are modeling what you wear. They model how you dress. They model how you speak on the phone. They model how you use your devices. They model how you interact with your friends. You are their movie, and they're going to model everything you do. So teach a child everything up to the age of 7. You've pretty much set it into concrete. So just be aware, parents, that you are the model.
And it's such a great awareness as a parent. And there are 2 like directions you can take it. One is a defensive, like, no, I don't, and like kind of denial. I've seen that. I never use my phone. Well, yes, you do, because you're a person living in the 2023. Yes, you do. Like, but like I never, and like this defensive. Or the more liberating option is say, oh my God, I need to become aware of what I am. What am I doing? And a great way to see that I found to see my own behavior is to look at my behavior with my kids or of my kids. And thank you for bringing up that story. I laugh,
I loved it.
That's better to do at home. And Fair enough. But I'll share a negative one too. Like my kids, especially my daughter, she's very much a mini me, and my son is very much a mini his mother. But so especially her, but him too, they have this habit of like taking their jacket off and just throwing it on the table or on the floor or on a shelf, and taking their shoes off and putting them everywhere. And time and time again of reminding them until I looked at like, I'm picking up my own jacket from the sofa. I'm picking my own jacket up. And these are things you don't even see because they're your life. So something that I started to do, because you'd yell at that. How many times have I told you? And then you pick up this self-awareness. And this is where I've dealt with a lot of parenting guilt. And I think a lot of people can share with that. But I use parenting guilt as a tool and say, okay, how can I fix this? How can I make it better? So what I did is I saw like a few weeks back, I saw my daughter's shoes in the middle of the floor. And right next to them were my shoes in the middle of the floor. And I just saw hers at first. And I'm like, and then I saw mine. I'm like, oh my God. Well, I almost picked up mine. And I was like, no. I'm going to use this. So the next day, I was like, Sophia, come here, check this out. Like, look at these shoes. Should they be there? I said, wait, look at next to your shoes. Look at my shoes. You do that because I do that. And I don't want to do that anymore. So if you see, just like if I see your shoes, I'm going to tell you about it. If you see my shoes somewhere in the middle of the floor, you tell me about it. Okay, deal? And we kind of had a deal. And then since then, there was a time when she saw me take off my shoes and just leave them there. And she's like, Daddy, your shoes? Like, oh, yeah. like
Oh,
it can
that's
be,
beautiful.
it can
That's
be
beautiful.
a
Yeah,
learning
it's fun.
experience together. Right. It's not, you don't have to
Yeah,
feel bad. Like, it's not like this,
no.
well, she's going to look down on me. No, we're a team.
One of the it's a team effort, and one of the greatest things, you see, I love that, because one of the greatest things is sharing your story with your child,
Mm,
and how getting them to help you change or adapt. I just love that, and appreciating them. Like, I sometimes when I would say, I really appreciate you hanging your coat up when you come in.
yeah,
Ah,
I love doing that.
don't say nothing else. And that's all you have to say.
Yes.
And they just go, oh, okay. And then the next time they do it because you really sincerely mean it. I really appreciate it. Or, when my partner does the dishes, I don't care if he does it and I say thank you every day and we've been together for 10 years. And I go, I really appreciate it when you help me do the dishes. Or I
Yeah.
really appreciate what you've done for us today with these, building something in there. And I don't think people do that enough.
Mm.
I don't think we do it enough. We don't even appreciate ourselves, and we
No, that's what it
need to.
comes
We need to
down
say, gee, Ava, I really appreciate the fact that you actually had a great day today, and
to.
have a
Yeah. Oh,
laugh. Use humor. Humor's fantastic. Go and jump on, fill your tank. Jump on YouTube. You can't because your computer's not letting you, but
my phone.
jump on YouTube or your phone, but jump on YouTube and find a comedian and
Yeah.
spend 5 minutes laughing instead of watching the ridiculous news that
Oh
makes you
gosh.
terribly in a bad space. Watch something fun, learn something new. We have such a wealth of knowledge out there that's at our fingertips. And in 5 minutes, we can learn how to bake something, make something, develop something, our minds. We could do a 10-minute yoga, a meditation. We could do anything at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And one of the key things when you said about going out and meeting people when you're on your own, one of the things that I did was I had a group of friends that were like-minded. They loved music and they loved having dinner, and they had children. So every Friday after school, they would come around and the adults would play the instruments. The kids would play together and I would cook dinner because I love cooking. And we would have this whole meal together with about 5 or 6 kids and 3 adults, and we would laugh, and then we decided we'd you know, as adults, when the kids would sometimes they would be up learning new games and things, and then I always called it adults time. After 7:30 was adults time, so the kids knew that they stay in their space, because adults need adults time, right? But kids may not be ready for bed or sleep, but they knew that they stayed in their space and they played their games and watched their movies and whatever. And it was a time for us to just be adults. And so we decided that we would try wine tasting. And it was hilarious, because we had to come with a bottle in a brown bag, and we had to, and there was no Google then or anything. We had to learn all about that wine, and then we'd do the tasting just like they did. And we would have so many laughs, and that was the joy. That's how we made fun. Once a month, we would do a dinner party and a theme. And so it could be a theme, let's say it was Mexican theme. So one of us, we drew it out of the hat. One did an entree, one did a mains, one did a dessert, but it had to be Mexican. And the kids would decorate the table. You know, like, this is how you can still have a lot of fun and still enjoy life without feeling like you're just on your own. And but you know, my rule is Sunday to Thursday is home life. So that is, get to bed early, get your routines in place. And even when I was getting the boys, I used to train youth into employment in my business. That was their mantra: Sunday to Thursday, no drinking alcohol, no going out. It was work mode. Get your lunches ready, cook your dinners, get your gear ready, make sure your stuff is clean. All those things that have never been instilled in them before. They would come to work really proud, and they clean stuff. And so we have the ability to change lives with the right attitude. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So this conversation is so wonderful. I know we had questions before. I think I went through one of the questions that I wrote, and that's fantastic. And time's just been flying by, but I want to be, you know, I want to keep in mind that this is for listeners and be respectful of your time too. And it's getting late. So I do want to get to this. You have another book coming up that I don't think is out yet. It's called Help Me Help My Child.
It is.
What's the main objective of that book then?
Well, when I wrote Behavior as Communication, I really wanted to make sure that it was a book that was easily read, affordable. It had strategies in there that people could work with straight away. But that was the beginning. And the second book goes right into the practical parenting techniques. It's really about communication, how you get a better understanding of child development. So what I did was how do you get to know your child? I mean, how do you really get to know your child? How do you tell a teacher what your child is like when they go to school? How do you keep developing that understanding of your child believing in themselves? Because if someone said to you, tell me about yourself, Jessie, you know, tell me about you. You'll tell the basic things, but do you really know your favorite color? Do you really know your favorite dessert? Do you really know your favorite food? Or, you know, do you know your favorite sports? And so this book is about parents getting to know their child. So the first chapter is really about, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? And
awesome.
I've put spaces in there where parents can start observing their child and really looking at, who is your child? What is it that they really love? What is it that they do well? That it's really interesting when you really stop and you don't comment, you don't think, you just observe. And then the second one is about building bridges and understanding each other. It goes into play, all the different ways play is about developing. And I'm not talking about playing just, you know, as in play. It delves into the different types of play and what each one means, and how parents can, lots of examples and strategies on how parents can integrate play to develop their child. And sensory, what does sensory mean for your child? Are they sensitive to noise or food or heat? How do you work that out? What can you do for them? All these sorts of things. Because, boy, you'd be surprised what your child or even you might be sensitive to that you didn't even realize that affects your learning, that affects you getting to work with other people in certain environments. Then it's about, how to navigate the storms of life. And all through the book, there are strategies, even right down to toilet training, because that's a real biggie for a lot of people. How do you get that through? Because I'm serious. We've got 5-year-olds who are not toilet trained now. And that's pretty serious stuff. We've got 5-year-olds who are coming to school with pull-ups on because it's easy. So when I'm talking about parenting, let me talk about one thing that it's just in my head, and maybe I'm wrong, but in the past, when you had a child, you generally spent at least a week in hospital, and you never left hospital until the baby was feeding. It was crucial. But nowadays, parents go home within 12 hours, some 24 hours. And there doesn't seem to be the follow-up that used to be. Like we have Plunkett here, and we used to have what we called Karatani. They would come into your home and they'd come and see if you're okay, and then make sure the baby's okay and make sure it's feeding all right, because that's absolutely crucial, and that mum's not got postnatal depression, and that everything is ticking along nicely. And if not, you get sent to the GP pretty pronto. Nowadays, it is not like that. I mean, I know people that have been discharged from hospital within 12 hours.
That's insane.
It is insane. And what's happening now is these parents, these mums, are sleep deprived, may not be able to be feeding properly, probably depressed because they feel like they've probably been working, because the mothers are getting older now, so they've been independent and been working and been probably successful in their careers, suddenly have a baby and realize, oh my God, I don't know what to do. They don't have the village that supported them in the old days, like grandparents and aunties and uncles and that, because everyone's working. And suddenly we now have a generation of very anxious children who are not resilient, children who are not coping, parents who are unhappy, they're anxious themselves, they're depressed, there's a big number of them out there. And this just is a snowball effect on the challenges that teachers are getting in the classrooms now. And it stems right from the beginning. And hence, if we can if I can empower parents, caregivers, or even just the community, even police officers and social workers, some insight into understanding that a child's behavior is telling you something, then hopefully they'll dig a lot deeper and understand that there's a lot more going on under that iceberg than just the tip. And that really is what the second book is about, is get to know your child from a preschool, from 2 years onwards, get to understand them so that you can pass that information to the teacher, so that the teacher can then build a relationship with your child, understanding them better. If your child has a health issue, there's a health plan in that book that you can fill out yourself and find out, how can I tell this information to my teacher, to the child's teacher, so that I know in my mind I don't have to be anxious when I go home because they have the information. So it's about empowering people who deal with children to understand how we can help them with real tangible strategies. So
I love that. And when does it come out?
Well, we're in the last stages of just getting the cover design. So hopefully, just if not before Christmas, it'll be just after Christmas.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. And that is called Help Me Help My Child. And that coming out just for Christmas. That sounds like a fantastic book. The first one, Behavior is Communication. So we can put the links to that. You can share the links wherever and post this wherever I share it. And thank you for coming on here. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I really enjoyed it. I can't believe how fast the time has gone, actually.
Thanks, Jesse. Lovely to talk to you. And I really, really appreciate the honor of sharing my stories with you on your shows. So take good care and come to New Zealand sometime where you're always welcome.